Hey, I'm Adamoshi, and in this video I'm going to talk about my experience with Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal as I draw a picture of one of the main characters, a cat named Morgana,
I am not a cat.
and why I love this game so much. I was vaguely familiar with the Persona series and Shin Megami Tensei through other videos and just general browsing of websites trying to learn what this series is even about. I wasn't compelled to play any Persona game until a fateful day in 2017 when Persona 5 was announced. The trailers and speculation videos that I watched made this game look so awesome. So when I found this bad boy on the shelf at my local Best Buy, I drooled at the box art. That art style though. I was slightly unsure jumping into a new franchise, but sometimes when a game comes along that looks this good, you just gotta take the dive. And holy moly, the opening cinematic blew my mind. As an aspiring artist, I appreciate the character designs and the overall graphic novel aesthetic. Morgana is my favorite character because of his cartoony style and spicy personality. He tends to stand out in my mind from the rest, which is why I chose to draw him. Also, it might have a little bit to do with the fact that I love cats. The animation and color scheme of the entire game is eye-catching, as shown through the navigation of the menus. Even the contrast between the real world and the metaverse has a stark contrast. The real world brighter and more colorful versus the darker and drearier cognition of the general populace. The art is not the only aspect of this game that is phenomenal. The music is straight up fire. It was definitely one of the best parts of the whole experience in which it introduced me to acid jazz. The music conveys the tone for most of its situations so beautifully. I find myself listening to it all the time while I do mundane chores or on long car rides. I personally prefer the battle theme Last Surprise over the battle theme Takeover, but don't get me wrong, both are great tracks. I enjoy a lot of different types of video games, but RPGs are my comfort food, especially the turn-based variety. For those who are not used to JRPGs, be warned, there is a lot of dialogue in this game, but that's not necessarily a bad thing in this case. For those who are familiar, there's not a lot of grinding required. If you can pretty easily handle the enemies in the level, you're okay to fight the boss. Just make it a point to tackle all the enemies you come across. There's a large element of strategy to the battles, but it's not too complicated. You have to experiment a little with each new enemy to find their elemental or physical weakness. Afterwards, when you encounter the same enemy, you can just remind yourself with the push of a button and make battles go more quickly and efficiently. On the subject of efficiency, the fast forward command and being able to run over weaker enemies in the Monomobile made getting to level 99 much easier at the end and was a very much appreciated quality of life improvement. The battles are not the only thing you'll be spending your time on though. When I first heard that I was going to have to live a life of a normal high schooler on top of all the otherworldly adventures, I kinda groaned inside. It sounds like filler, but
Ooh boy.
I was wrong. I learned a lot about Japan and its people and history. One of the most interesting facts I learned that makes me sound smart at parties is that in the entirety of human history, we've only ever mined about 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of gold. Fascinating. The time you spend in the real world increases your social stats and effectiveness in the metaverse. Spending time with your party members makes them better in battle, and spending time with non-party members gives you perks you can use to make your time outside of palaces more efficient. Even though there is a lot of dialogue in this game, it's usually well written and witty, and demonstrates a lot of the individual characters' flaws. There are some truly funny moments. For example, Morgana and another party member named Ryuji are constantly dogging on each other for being stupid. When it comes to the main character, Joker, his dialogue choices are just multiple ways to say the same thing most of the time. But there are some choices that do matter, and there's a narrative reason for that. The game only has a couple of endings. You have to follow the narrative track to get either the good or bad ending. Basically, it all comes down to remembering that 90% of this game is a statement to prosecutor Sainijima, and no matter what choices you are presented with, you should never rat out your friends. That being said, I really do like the story of this game, especially the situations that the party finds themselves in could and do happen all the time. I like how the bosses you encounter increase in real-world authority and metaverse strength. Some of the personal social issues they face are really happening in our world, and it makes the game really relatable. I can see why they have you acknowledge that this is a work of fiction at the beginning. And it's not just you and your party members that have these problems. The non-party member confidants also have interesting problems and stories that just take a little bit more digging to get to. I like the references and obvious spoofs of other IPs like Mona, I Choose You, and a movie called The X Folders you can rent. Morgana says that for some reason, cats turning into buses is a fairly widespread cognition among the general public. A My Neighbor Totoro reference. I think what I liked most is that a game with so much style ended in style. The ending of Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal are so crazy and over the top that I never saw it coming. Ending this game after so many hours was like saying goodbye to real friends and was absolutely bittersweet. I like how both games' endings really left you to ask yourself what really would be best for the world. Did we do the right thing? While me and Joker are both satisfied with the outcome, I don't think these are questions that should disappear with the credits. Persona 5 has a lot of good and unanswerable questions that are worth thinking about. It spends a lot of its time telling you to stick to your justice. This brings up the unanswerable philosophical question of what is justice? Is it the greatest good for the greatest number of people? Is it still justice if what is best for people is the opposite of what they want? The final couple of bosses of the original Persona 5 are the main catalyst for this question. They say that justice derives from the will of the people, even if that will is detrimental to them in the long run, and that the protagonist, by opposing the will of the people, is in the wrong. They also ask where justice comes from. The protagonist and crew seem to subscribe to the position that justice comes from inside the individual and can be opposed to the wider view held by society and still be just, as, if not more valid. The antagonists in this game, on the other hand, represent an increasing amount of authority and control and seem to believe that justice comes from outside a person and comes from the law, authority figure, or God that gives justice to people, even if that justice is, in the end, only self-serving. Where does your justice come from, and do you believe in the justice held up by your society? Freedom is another theme explored in Persona 5. It obviously can mean different things to different people, and in this game we come to the question of freedom versus control. All of us in our modern society have voluntarily surrendered some of our freedom and submitted to some outside control in exchange for safety. How much control are you willing to be under for that safety? And how much freedom can you sacrifice and still be free? Is the freedom of not having to think for yourself really freedom? Are you moral if you outsource the root of your morality? All interesting questions and topics for you to try bringing up if you're ever in the mood to make a new enemy for life. All in all, I really love this game, so much that I bought it 4 freaking times, 2 steelbooks for each version, a digital of Royal, and the original physical copy I bought back in 2017. So I think it's safe to say that I'm a new fan for life of this series, so much that it's in my top 5 favorite games ever. There's a lot to love in Persona 5, and a few things to improve as this franchise moves into what will no doubt be a long and bright future. Also, Futaba's best girl. Okay, bye!